Hi, welcome. It's Monday and it's lunchtime, so that can only mean one thing. We're live and we're cooking with Livia from her kitchen in Italy, and I think today she's doing one of my very, very favourite recipes. She's going to be making a classic risotto. Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to see you. Any questions, any comments, please just pop them in the comment box below, and let's go and find Livia and see what the kitchen's looking like. Hello.
It's looking like a mess as usual. Hello everyone. I'm a little bit dressed into a summer dress, so it's hot as usual, but it's a good day to make a risotto because I went to a special rice producer when I was in Friuli, so I bought a lot of packages of their rice, and I would like to talk about this rice to you.
Brilliant.
So that would be useful. You know, when I have experience like this, then I like to share it. So that's why.
Yeah, that's great because risotto rice is there's not just one type of risotto rice, is there? You've got a few that you recommend for different.
Yeah, it depends what is produced in certain areas. So mainly the one that we are going to use today, it's Carnaroli, as you can read, is actually considered to be the best Italian rice, variety of rice, and is the one that keeps the cooking for longer, doesn't get overcooked easily. So I think it's really a very good kind. But I got here something that I've done to show you how two varieties can be completely different. So because different regions in Italy produce different variety of rice. So Carnaroli is produced usually, let's say, in Veneto, which is actually where I've filmed it. Piemonte is famous for arborio, okay, and then also Lombardia produced some rice, and the Alone Nano is produced in Verona area. The Alone Nano is another variety which is really good, which is the one you can see there, which is quite here, round and flat. Okay, instead Carnaroli have a longer grain, which is a little bit, let's say, more consistent, I think. Comunque, both of these two kinds, the Alone Nano or Carnaroli, are really two good cereals to make a risotto. Okay, so a risotto is a modern invention. It's been actually invented in Lombardia, so in Milano area, really. So it's quite modern. The way a risotto is made, and if it's called that way, is modern. Instead, using the rice in the Italian traditional cooking go back to long time ago. So I will also explain you the difference between making a risotto and cooking with rice, which makes, you know, quite a big difference. Because a risotto has to have this typical characteristic, which is being creamy on a wave. We say all'onda. And have to release a lot of starch just at the end. It doesn't have to be a boiled rice. Okay? Even if a boiled rice with a good stock is also another good dish that you should have, especially when it's cold outside and or you are sick, for example, and you have a problem, can be a good kind of rice, okay, but it cannot be called risotto. Risotto is called this way. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but because risotto, otto means 8, because actually what you do with a spatula or with a spoon is doing this 8 shape, si può dire, movement, okay, while you are doing the creaming part of the risotto, which is the end when the starch comes out and creates the creaminess of the dish. Okay, so that's why it's called risotto, they say. But it's a modern dish, as I was saying, and typical from Milan, where we always criticize that Milan don't have many dishes which are typical. This way of cooking a rice is really typical from Milan. Today we're going to make it with courgette, because I think by now every guest have some courgettes in the garden, in the vegetable garden, and maybe they don't know how to use it, because as we said many times, courgette plants produce a lot and very easy, but then, you know, if it depends on how you cook it, you will have a good result. You know, you have to give it quite a good, you know, recipe to be able to, to use as much as you can in the right way the courgette that you produce. We need shallot, Yeah.
And when you're cooking risotto, Livia, is the other key ingredient not like a glass of wine while you're cooking and you're like drinking wine and cooking at the same time? Is that not the secret to good risotto?
Exactly. Like it makes it very successful also because you rest and enjoy, you know, what you're doing, and you know it will take quite a lot of time because it's a cereal, and it takes at least 15 minutes. So you got 15 minutes to empty a bottle of wine while you're pouring just half of one glass into your risotto. Obviously, if you make a risotto which has a pale color, like with Courgette, you should use white wine. If you make a risotto which can have a darker, intense color, for example, with radicchio, like we've done previously, you should use red wine because it will help the color to be more intense. So it's really relaxing, and I really like it. I like it also in summer. You can really, and I consider it, depending on what you flavor it with, I consider it really like a main course, because if you do it, for example, with fish, is a way to making a main course, because it's including a bit of everything that you need on your diet for your dinner. Comunque, rice is a cereal, as we were saying. So it goes through a lot of different difficult procedures to have the white grain that we see here. And one of it, it's la sbiancatura. So after you take off the skin, okay, then you have to make it as white as you can see. And this procedure make it easier to cook. So when you buy a rice which is integrale, all meal, it obviously include all its skin, you know, its protection, and not all of it, but part of it, and is less refined, and it will take much longer to cook, but for sure it will contain better elements that help your diet to be even better. Okay, but the risotto that we usually use for a risotto, the rice that we usually use for a risotto, is a white rice, similar to this. And so it's classified, okay, considering, now I try to place some here on my hand, the, let's say, il rapporto between the length and the width of the rice. So there is semifino and superfino. Carnaroli is superfino e anche arborio, okay? And it cooks usually for between 16 and 17 minutes. It got quite long, the longest grain that you can have, and they are about 6.4 millimeters, okay? Instead, for example, Vialone Nano, which is the other one that I've shown you there, produced mainly in Verona, that I hope you can find in your supermarket, because it's also really good quality, full of starch, so will make your risotto very creamy, is more, let's say, less wide, cioè more wide and less long, so it's just 5.5 to 6 millimeters long, so it's shorter, and it will cook obviously faster, about 15 minutes. Okay. Now we should start, otherwise, as usual, we never end. Comunque, this is one of the only producers, it's called La Fagiana, which means the pheasant, okay? And is one of the only producers of rice in Veneto, actually. They produce 400 hectares of Carnaroli, which is their favorite, and they produce it only, they're going to collect it about September and October. They will keep it in the storage with the skin on all year round, and will just clear the bit that they need to sell little by little. So if you go there and you buy about 5 kilos like I do, because it's not easy to find it. So I got 5 of these. They are vacuum packed because there is no chances to protect it from the little flies, that, you know, moths that go inside. So the best way would be to vacuum pack it. Another chance you could try is with bay leaves. So you should put some bay leaves in your wardrobe. No, come si dice? No, wardrobe, sorry, in your drawer. Cupboard, okay, where you keep the rice. And then I think this moth should not like bay leaves. So that's something you should try, maybe, if you want to experience that.
That's a really
I don't know, didn't try yet.
Yeah, bay leaves just for rice or for anything else? You just leave the bay
leaves?
For
anything else. It's a smell that they don't like, which actually is quite a good smell. So we could fill up my house with it because we are full of, okay, because they go also in pasta here, so it's quite dangerous. Okay, so for the risotto now we're going to start from toasting the rice. Okay, so which is very important. I'm going over there. And another important thing to decide is which pan you're going to use to cook the risotto. In this case, I'm going to use this, which is aluminum, no, stainless steel actually. Aluminium and copper, actually, copper is even better than this one, okay? Because it conducts, sorry, non so come si dice, the temperature very fast. So we need a wide pan for 6 persons, should be at least 30 centimeters diameter, okay? Because each rice needs to be in contact with the surface to absorb the high temperature faster, okay? First of all, we need, let's say, a shock for the rice, which is the toasting procedure, which means placing the rice in contact with hot temperature to create a skin, let's say a protection in the pores. Okay, so I'm considering 2 handfuls of rice for each person, doing a little bit more, because I think the risotto is also good on the next day. So you can always warm it if you don't overcook it when you make it. And I'm going to leave here to warm quite fast all the rice. This is the toasting of the rice, which is required when you want to seal the pores and you want to make sure that the rice will not get overcooked easily, and it will keep the cooking better. And because what we want is that the starch comes out from the grain little by little, not all at once in a lot of liquid. If you boil a risotto, you will have all the starch that goes in the water that you're using to boil the rice, and you won't have the effect of a good creamy risotto, because the starch will be released in the water, because the contact with the liquid is too much. You know, it's like dipping it in a lot of hot liquid will make it just lose all its starch all in once. Instead, we want to create a protection now, toasting it, and then we will also need to let it release the starch with the liquid that we add little by little to make it creamy. I'm cutting.
Sorry, Livia, can I ask? Is that quite a high heat you've got it on? There's no oil, there's nothing. It's just the rice.
Nothing at all. Yeah, this is just to seal the rice. La tostatura, toasting we say. You can say it's just getting the right temperature, sealing the pore. Every grain has pores, right? And we want to seal them, protect them. Okay. So here I'm boiling some courgette a little bit, because I'm going to, and I will tell you about the stock, I'm going to blend them at the end to create a cream that we will use to make the risotto even more creamy. So I'm boiling 2 courgettes, which are boiling in the stock that I have just made. Meanwhile, I keep warming the rice to toast it. So it's also very important the kind of brodo, of stock, let's say broth, because I think it sounds more complicated, I don't know, so it's better. It makes a big difference when you make a risotto. So the risotto that you are making need to be cooked with the stock, with the broth, that have the same flavor as the ingredients that you're using to flavor the risotto, right? So the broth, il brodo, have to have the same flavor. So it will include some of the vegetables that you're going to use for the risotto. In this case, I'm using the water, because the water also to boil the courgette, so that the elements of the courgettes will go in the water that I previously start boiling, adding, as usual, celery, carrot, onion, some parsley, and then a little bit of salt. Okay, that's the only salt that will go in our risotto. Okay, so meanwhile, this is high temperature now. You should just touch the rice and realize that it's actually really getting warmer and getting ready to be sealed, let's say. As you can see, it doesn't have to burn, it doesn't have to change the color, but it just has to have a heat shock, let's say, that close the pores and protect the rice from being overcooked. Okay. Now that is toasting, I'm going to keep it on the side, and I'm going to start dicing some shallot. Okay. now I leave the rice here in a pan on a side. Okay, turn off the flame. This is the rice that has been sealed. Okay, I leave it here, and now we go back here, and I'm going to dice the shallot, which I like to use together with the courgette flavor. Okay, so this is shallot, which actually now they are starting to collect them. So we have also local one. This is not the local one, but we have nice, very small but very flavored shallots. Okay, scalogno.
I've just spotted, Livia, your lovely courgette flowers.
Flowers, yeah. Well, we have them really now. We have them all year round. These are going to be added just at the end because obviously they break, you know. So obviously they're going to mix easy, even if you just add them at the end. They don't need to be overcooked. Instead, I'm going some little small cubes of courgette because to give a bit of crunchiness to the risotto, we are adding also some bits of courgette, not just the mash blended by the blender after it's been boiling, but also a bit of small cubes. Okay, so this is, I'm just making the risotto for two, right? So I don't need a lot of courgette. Okay, so, and I'm going to add now some olive oil. Okay, and I'm going to add butter at the end when I make a risotto, and that way the butter will help the creaminess. Butter and Parmigiano with starch will make the risotto very cremoso. I have to pay attention to the temperature on the hob because of my phone, Lorna, because that's the problem. Because I don't know if it's having problems with this heat wave that we got here, but when the temperature is very high, it turns off, and then we have to stop and start again. I realized that's the problem. Also, when we've done the lesson last Friday, it stopped. Right.
I heard that you were doing you're doing barbecue last Friday.
Yes, I've been doing the barbecue. Yeah, and I think they enjoyed it. We made a spiedini, but most of all, we made different side dish that go well when you make a barbecue. Yeah. Brilliant. I couldn't make a barbecue on the terrace because otherwise I would have been burning. Also because the lesson is in the morning, so it's very sunny outside, and I'm not sure it's a good idea. But in Italy, we grill the meat all the time, in winter and also in summer. And usually, instead of having a barbecue, we use fireplaces. In every house, there is a fireplace, like the one that you got, but actually we are allowed to use it. And I'm not sure in UK you can really light a fire inside the house because of the smoke, maybe pollution. But yeah, you can. So in every house, someone have a fireplace. So that's why we make our barbecue usually very often. So we grill the meat, let's say, in the fireplace more than doing the barbecue outside. Okay. So I'm checking the temperature on my phone all the time now. Make sure. Okay. I don't know if there is a phone that can survive to very high temperature.
No, I'm not sure, Livia. I don't know. And what are you cooking? What cooking classes are you doing this week? Are you doing more barbecue this week, or what are you doing?
I think I'm doing a barbecue, and I'm doing also the sauce lesson, which is sauces. Yeah, where we do a different from usual carbonara. We learn how to do the real tomato sauce, like the fresh one that you can make with fresh tomatoes. Since finally we are in summer. And there are good quality of tomatoes, so how to make your own passata, how to bottle it, and how to make a fresh passata with just raw tomatoes. So a few sauces, and then puttanesca, so different from the one that we have done usually at the lesson.
And do you have your own tomatoes, like sun-dry your own tomatoes in the terrace? I saw some really nice pictures last week.
I know.
That look great.
Yeah. I actually, this year I didn't do them yet, but they are really used a lot here in many recipes. The way, to make them last. Actually, I have mine there, but this year I didn't do them yet. But they are really easy to make, and I think you should consider to start making them in UK because you're having a hot weather there. So you just cut your cherry tomatoes, if they are sweet cherry tomatoes, even better, in half, and then you place them on your board, wooden board, with some rock salt on top, or even just normal salt, sea salt, and it will concentrate the liquid, and it will get dry. Here, really, just the speed is different depending on the heat wave that you're having, but you just need, if it's very hot, it's 30 degrees, I think even just a day and a half should be worth it. And I have the terrace here where it's really under the sun all day, so I can do it easily. Sorry, you can never leave your risotto, otherwise you burn it. Okay, so now I'm going to add the rice, which is still warm because it's been toasting. Okay, so from now you should consider, let's say, about 17 minutes. This is difficult to be judged exactly. The time for the cooking of the rice is, you know, they write it in the package, but it cannot be exactly the same all the time, because a risotto depends really on, let's say, on how much space you got. So, for example, if I'm cooking it in a big pan, then it has more space, it's more in contact with the heat. So it will allow me to let's say, to cook it for less time, because it got a lot of space, is in contact with the heat much more. So for sure it will cook faster. Instead, if it's in a not too wide, in a narrow pan, then it has more space to be in contact with the heat, and obviously it will take longer. Another thing that, you know, we should say is that you don't really need to keep stirring it all the time, because that would make it, there's the risk of breaking the rice, for example, and also, well, it confuses a little bit. I know it's nice, with, as we were saying, with a glass of wine. I'm adding now some white wine. Better. Okay, sorry, I just protect my phone from turning off.
Was that a glass of wine, Livia, or half a bottle?
No, it was just, let's say, half a glass. You should not use too much of it, because otherwise there is too much acidity. But anyway, when you add the wine, turn up the flame for a few minutes until the alcohol evaporates, because what you need is that the alcohol doesn't stay too much. I mean, it has to evaporate, because it creates strong acidity, and we don't want a lot of acidity in the risotto. Okay, so that's why turn up the flame, let the alcohol evaporate, and then keep cooking the rice the way you were doing, which means adding the stock little by little. Okay, if you have a nice flavor stock with the same ingredients as we were saying, which you're using to make the risotto, you don't need to add anything special, so not even salt. If your stock is already flavored enough and has been cooking and reducing for enough, you don't need to add any salt, not even to the rice, but just Parmigiano will do. So now, the reason why I was saying risotto is called that way is because keep stirring it. You should do 8. You should draw the 8, and then make it called risotto. But that's something you should do at the end, when you want to accelerate the procedure of the starch to go out from the grain, from the rice. Okay, so because keep stirring it helps the starch to be released. But that's something that we want to happen at the end, right? Never add too much stock, because otherwise you risk to boil it, and then it would make all the starch come out all in once. Okay, all at once. Okay, check the temperature here. Okay. It seems to be boring, but as we were saying, if you keep having a glass of wine in your hand, helps you make it less boring. Okay. We are also going to prepare the courgette flowers that we are adding at the end. There is another way to make a risotto. which is not a good way, I think, is to add a lot of stock all at once. As we were saying, it will make you release all the starch all at once, and the risotto will have less flavor because the starch will be in the water and it will be like a boiled risotto. But it helps you not to have to stir all the time. So if you want to leave, for example, for 10 minutes and you want to be free, you just not stir, stop stirring and leave all the liquid in the risotto, and it won't stick, obviously, and it will keep cooking. Moving it sometimes helps for all the surface to be in contact with the heat, but you can also leave it adding the stock all at once, but I'm not sure, I don't like to do it that way because I don't think it becomes as creamy as it is when you make it, keep stirring it. Sometimes and adding just little by little the liquid and not all at once. Okay, so there are different dishes, Lauren, while I show you how to clean the courgette flowers over here, okay, there are different dishes that you can make with rice, the traditional one that I was talking about. There is one rice, which I won't call it risotto because it's not made exactly this way. It's made with more liquid in once, but very typical from Treviso area, okay, so where we usually go with flavors, where we're going in September, Lorna, right? Yeah. Okay, which is called riso e tocchi, okay, and that means riso and tocchi, which means 6 pieces of meat. So this is a meat, a chicken and rice dish, which I think British would love it. So we have filmed it with, it's a traditional historical recipe, and we have filmed it with pasta grannies. Is a risotto, we can also call it risotto, but actually it's more like a rice dish, like panissa it is, which is another dish where the rice cooks with a lot of stock and with meat, which at the end are like main courses, okay, but they're very old and traditional. So this risotto with chicken, we will do it once, Lorna, is you make a stew with the chicken on a side that cooks as long as is required, even 2 or 3 hours, and just with the liquid which is obtained with this, let's say we can call it stew, I think. Okay, when you stew, you add also tomato and tomato sauce. We usually stew on the hob. You stew something in the oven. Instead, we do it on the hob with the sauce, just the sauce and not the meat. You will cook your risotto into that one. So, and that will give a lot of flavor to the rice, okay? It won't be cooked adding, you know, little by little this sauce, but the sauce is there from the beginning. And at the end, you serve the dish with big pieces of chicken. So at the end, since it's a main course, I think in your different culture way of eating, it would be a nice dish because you just cook a risotto and it's enough for your meal, let's say. Comunque, we will do it one of these days. We film it in this rice producer here, Riseria. So to clean a courgette flower that you can stuff, you can deep fry, you can use it in many different ways. It got quite a lot of flavor. You just have to, open it here, okay, and take the stem, off, and also these petals here, I don't know what to call them, okay. So this will break, you can tear it by hand, but it will break by itself, let's say. It will mix, and actually the bright yellow color will stay in the risotto, and it's really nice. So you should keep one to decorate the top. So it's nice for the color. Maybe it doesn't change much in the flavor, but it's nice to use the courgette, especially a courgette flower, especially when you have them in your vegetable garden. And I'm sure you got also some flowers. So it's nice to use them. Now, coming back here to check the rice. As you can see, is absorb all the liquid. I can see that the rice is ready from the way it changes color, from the way when I touch it, from the consistency that I can realize even just touching it with a wooden spoon. But most of all is the color. So when the color of the grain is not pale white and it starts turning into, let's say, beige, the rice is starting to cook. The creaminess of what you can see in the pan is what helps you to realize that the rice is cooked, for sure. I'm adding a bit more stock, and now it's time to blend the courgette that I've been using to follow the stock.
Yeah, and can I just check, Livia, the only sort of seasoning then is the broth, is the stock, and there's only a little bit of olive oil. There's nothing else, a little bit of salt, no other seasoning with the courgettes. Is it not quite bland?
No, so for now there is nothing. I have butter. I have it here. I'm going to add it at the end. You know, butter is not good if you cook it because, I mean, it depends which kind of butter you're using. If it's not clarified butter, it can burn easily. So it doesn't, the less it cooks, I think the better is for your health. So we want the creaminess of the butter. I've used just olive oil to, let's say, to cook the courgette and the shallot, and I don't need anything else. Just some butter at the end, and especially another very important ingredient will be obviously Parmigiano that I'm getting ready with now here. Okay, and if you grate your Parmigiano right before, it's better. Right now I'm using already grated Parmigiano, but if you have your Parmigiano and you grate it right before, I think the quality of Parmigiano makes a big difference. You can add also other cheeses, like for example, taleggio is really good for risotto because it's creamy and it helps the creaminess and also doesn't have a too strong flavor. So to make mantecatura, to obtain the creaminess of the risotto, you should use just your hands and the spatula or the spoon. That way the starch will come out, okay, in the dish, and it will make it creamy. So just the spatula and your strength will make the risotto creamy. Obviously, if you're using a good quality of rice, because if you're using a rice which doesn't have a lot of starch, or for example, if you make a risotto with pre-cooked rice, like parboiled, not that it's not good, but it's completely different. If you make a risotto with parboiled rice, the starch is already has left when they pre-cooked it, because parboiled rice is pre-cooked, boiled, so to release all the starch for it not to get overcooked. So parboiled rice is good, for example, for cold salad made with rice, but it's not really good for a risotto. If you like a creamy risotto, if your result has to be a creamy risotto, because it would not be creamy at all. So you can use parboiled rice if you do certain quality, certain kind of risotto. For example, maybe a fish risotto, you don't want it to be creamy, but since right now I'm trying to obtain more creaminess, non so se dice così, adding also blended courgette, it won't be good to add, to use parboiled rice, because I would just have less creaminess. If you can see, when this liquid will reduce, I can show you that there is already some creamy part of this rice, which is already in the liquid, okay? So now I'm going to dig out the courgettes from the water, and I'm going to blend them in the blender. Obviously, if you use dark courgettes, you would have dark color of this cream that you want to add now to the risotto. It will give color, okay? Also, I add not too much liquid now because I can see that the thickness and the color and the size also of the grain is grown. It became bigger because it's getting ready. It's almost cooked, so I cannot add too much liquid right now. Okay, and now I blend over here. Sorry for that. Okay, done. I blended the courgette. As we were saying, if you want to have a darker color, you should add dark courgette, okay? These are the local ones, so I'm using what I buy at the farmer's market. I'm adding it now to the rice because now the rice is almost cooked. So, and I don't want to get overcooked. Also, the last part of this procedure is with the flame off, just stirring it. With just my hands, let's say, with my strength, I will make sure that the starch will all be out from the grain. So I turn it off because I can see the grain is already much bigger than before and the color has changed. I add some butter. Okay. And then I'm going to start mixing it. You should do it doing the 8 follow the 8 shape.
It's a really good tip, Livia, isn't it? Excellent.
That's why it's called a risotto, see? Well, otherwise you can use a spatula, but you have to do, what you have to do, you have to be fast, and you have to, non so, emulsionare si dice, I don't know say in English, but make sure that the starch now is released. Then the risotto has to rest. I'm adding now the flour, which will not cook, as we were saying, but will just be mixed in.
Yeah, I'm used to having courgette flour stuffed and fried, stuffed with like anchovies and mozzarella and then fried. It is as a starter.
See, we do it, everywhere. Yeah, now it's really an Italian typical dish. And I'm adding Parmigiano, which, as I was saying, if it's good, 2 big handfuls will make it even more creamy. Use a good quality of Parmigiano. Obviously, if you have a more seasoned or more mature one, it will have stronger flavor. If you use a young one, it will be less, more delicate or simple. Depends on what kind of risotto you make. Courgette is quite delicate, so I don't need to use a very aggressive cheese, because otherwise it would be dominant. Okay. So as you can see now, it's really creamy.
It looks really creamy, doesn't it? It looks delicious.
It's really creamy. I'm glad it's ready, so I can have lunch.
Perfect.
I'm going to serve it here. Obviously, you can use, many ways to dish it. You can even prepare the dish using a mold, okay, and just serve it with creating like a small, decoration. I'm going to add some. I'm going over there. I'm going to use a courgette flour to decorate it on top. Ok, così. Sorry.
Wow, that looks gorgeous. Buon appetito.
Okay.
That's delicious.
Finally, there is lunch at a normal time.
Well done.
Well, maybe it would be a little bit hot for this step, but I let it cool down. And actually, a risotto is always good because you can use it in many different ways. The next day, Carla teach you how to make arancini. Obviously, if it's a delicate flavor like this, it's good also inside arancini. If it's a fish risotto, obviously you won't make a very traditional one, arancini, but you can just use the starch which is in the dish. That the next day will be even more sticky to make the arancini and deep fry them, serve them as a starter. So.
Yeah, someone just commenting saying your mum's going to have a really nice lunch, Livia. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't add any pepper for her, so I hope she's going to like it.
Yeah, delicious. Thank you so much. That's perfect. It's delicious. Thank you. I thought it was a really good idea as well to liquidize the courgettes and to add them in at the end. That's really unusual. I've never seen that before. You're just amazing, Livia, with your recipes. It's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good. And lots of lovely comments. I've always been enjoying watching you as well, which is really nice. Which is good. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you.
Yeah.
Are you going back to Loch Lomond? No. Where are you going?
Yeah, this week. So the flavours groups this week are in Loch Lomond again, and they are back with Mandy doing Pilates and Nordic walking this week. And the forecast is quite good. So I think the sun's going to shine, which is great. So that's really good. So yeah, I'm doing Loch Lomond, but hopefully we'll be back in Italy soon, Livia, which is great. Are you having a holiday? You've a couple of weeks off now from the lives. Are you having a bit of a holiday?
Actually, maybe at the end of August, on the 23rd, I'm going to.
Oops, I've just lost you. I think your phone's just gone. So sorry. Never mind. All right. Anyway, nice. Thank you to see you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.